let's move on. Let's talk about the the big elephant in the room, really, around the season ticket prices. Because this week, Middlesbrough announced the early bird prices for season tickets for next season. The early bird prices have went up by about 5.5% to 6%, however you want to calculate it. And the deadline was initially announced to be the 15th of March, and it's the earliest ever been. So there is a spreadsheet which was. I want to credit Sean Wilson, who is an unbelievable statsman when it comes to Middlesbrough. And if you haven't got him a follow on Twitter, please do, because some of his stuff's really, really insightful and really cool. So do that. But what we were looking at, the deadlines in general, the average really, we're looking at probably April time. There has been the occasional May deadline as well, but this was the earliest it's ever been on the 15th of March, and when it was initially announced. And then after consultation with a supporters forum and also with 12th man, Rob Nichols was probably the key members that were mentioned. Boro have moved it back to the 30th now, so giving people an extra 2 weeks, two and a bit weeks to get the payment in. And also Red Faction as well have been among a number of fan groups and communities who have basically been saying that they're against the prices, it shouldn't go up anymore, and they are planning to make a stand to that as well. So the 6% as well doesn't cover what Boro are going to be losing in terms of costs year on year. It's up by 12% across the group, but appreciate it's a business. But guys, I'm really keen to hear what you think about all of this, because it's a very touchy subject. I definitely feel like in football, not just in this club, but also across the entire fan groups as well in football teams. I'm very interested to see what Sunderland do as well this year too. But then you said at the start of the show it was a bit of an on goal from Boro really to come out the way they have. What do you think of the season ticket increase for next season?
Well, I must admit, when I saw it and when I saw that mine had gone up, my reaction wasn't one of surprise or even shock, because I think I've been conditioned as a football fan to expect to be priced out of what is a working class game. And that is really disheartening, to be honest. And we can talk about the rising costs all we want. We were in Middlesbrough supporters forum meetings, Johnny, where it was detailed to us exactly, how much it's going to go up. But Boro aren't exclusive to that. They're not individual to that. I think every club in the Championship will be experiencing those rising costs, because the living is going up, isn't it? The price of actually living is going up. So why is it then that we have to increase our prices? Sunderland will be an interesting one, because they're the closest to us in terms of region, and if they don't go up, it's going to look incredibly bad. I don't know if theirs have gone up yet. I don't know what's been announced from them. But what I also think is, what I don't like is that Boro are essentially hoping that Boro fans' blind loyalty will keep them engaged and get them to purchase the early bird price, which it probably will. Like, I'll hold my hands up and say that I probably will end up purchasing an early bird season ticket, even though it's at that price, because all I've ever known is to follow Boro, and all my weekends have ever been is going to the Riverside and following Boro. But there's just a lack of incentive to it. Like, when I worked at Redcar Athletic, we did a membership scheme where there was so much more incentive than the football. I think they conceded that, given the level that they're at Northern League Division 1, that the football isn't always going to be worth it. And even though it's a completely different level at Boro, it's still very much the same. Sometimes the football just isn't worth it. It's very dependent on success and style of play. So I think you've got to bring about different ways of essentially making that worth it. And at Redcar, we had basically an app which enabled fans to go to particular club partners like Rita's, for example, or micro pub on the corner near the Redcar Pier, and get a discount. You've mentioned it before, Johnny. Go to the Riverside shop and enable season card holders to get a discount. There's just not a lot of incentive behind the season card, which I think makes it even worse. And then it's compounded with a really cheeky and audacious, really early deadline. Like, that was for me, and the coldness of the email as well, which didn't even say thank you for the support. There's no marketing, there's no campaign, there was just nothing. It was just there, pay. And I think that's what really piss the fans off. And I tell you what, Boro were lucky that they had 2 away games because after this, because if it was at home, it would have got very, very toxic. I think it was just an absolute PR on goal. And I think this needs to be a period where Boro need to reflect on what they've done, what they've sent out, the message that they've sent to their supporters, and think, is it worth it? Because, yeah, the fans are not happy, and they will take a stand, and it will be far more vocal this time than it ever has been. And, I back that.
Tom, I'm keen to get your thoughts as well. Obviously, we've haven't really seen each other in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't really get most of your thoughts of it. But I'm keen to see what you think of it as well.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that Dana just mentioned there, which is the thing that really stuck out for me, was the coldness of the email that was sent out, and it didn't mention anything. There was no, meet Woody's new bird or all like that. It was just email there going, well, your season ticket gets your receipt for the season, and you can get more priority points for away games. So yeah, buy one. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, you've done that for mid-March, which, I mean, to be fair, like, I knew the early bird deadline would have been coming. I was planning more for the end of March or April financially, and I think most fans probably would have been. So for it, for it to have come mid-March, which, like you say, is the earliest it's ever been, I was just like, what? There's no reasoning behind it or anything like that. The actual increase, when I'm kind of taking it into account, it's like it's an extra 30 quid on last year. And I think they did eventually say in the second follow-up kind of thing where they said they've changed the deadline. They were like, oh, it's due to rise in cost. I'm like, right, that's slightly more forgivable. If I'm kind of trying to justify it and I'm spreading that £30 over 23 games of the season, it's not that much more per game. Yeah, that's okay. I'd still prefer the price to be lower, but that's probably the most forgivable part of it for me. But it was like, I don't think it needed like a full-on marketing campaign or anything like that, but we needed something more than what we got. Even like last year or the year before, like, you had the whole what was half season ticket thing when the feeling was good under Wilder or the Wilder card, and like last year it was built on a lot of good feeling. This year there's very little to be positive around this season. I think the club are kind of aware of people's opinions on where the club's been as a season this year and what we're likely heading towards, and it's not the playoffs. But there was nothing in that email which would say this is a good reason to renew, or this is why you should be doing it like this early, or anything like that. Which was just really, really tone deaf. And I can't understand who signed that off. Like what they were thinking when they signed that off to be sent out to fans, because or I don't understand if they were expecting a different sort of reaction to it, because I'm looking at it and thinking people are only going to react to that in one way. So what were you thinking? So yeah, it was, the main part for me was just the way it's been done. I'm happy the deadline's still been pushed back, but I mean, for me personally, I am still thinking about, would I rather spend 510 quid, I think it is now, on that, or would I rather save me money and do something else on a weekend? Because this season's not really given much to be inspired about, and obviously there's been nothing said about what we're trying to achieve next year as well. So it's like, give us a little bit more information and incentive to renew.
Yeah, and like on that as well, I think if we're able to get like the early bird deadlines up as well, I think if you both mentioned it around the deadlines, the 9 times we've had it over the last season or last 15 seasons, 9 times have been in April. So early middle April has been the time where it looks to renew. Now, if you look at the 31st of March, it's been it's probably throughout the last 4 years have been in the end of March, and obviously we've got 2 there for May in the 9-10 season. I think you need a lot of early bird for the incentive for what the season that we'd had. You need more than that, and then obviously again with the 11-12 season as well. Again a difficult season under Morris. You're having to try and bring more people in and getting people to buy tickets. And for me, it was frustrating. I think I knew prior to the announcement that was going up. I think I was at the sports forum on the Monday. I think it was announced a bit later on in the week that it was or the week after that it was going to go up, and it was relayed back to rising costs across the season. Like Boro have noticed a big increase in costs of about 12%. So the season ticket inflation itself doesn't really cover the loss that Boro are having as making as a club anyway. So there's that. So Boro do have a bit of a loss. But also when you do have, it's a balance for Boro, and where you kind of say, right, if we don't make enough commercial or make enough revenue this year, that means our loss is going to be higher. The loss is going to be high means it's going to be less potential incomings or outgoings, depending on what we want to do as a club in terms of on the pitch. So there is some sort of domino effect around it all, where if you don't get the revenue, you don't really have a bigger budget. The bigger budget is the bigger budget enough to bring in the quality of player that you want to bring in to go for a amount of the division. And then there's also another aspect of it as well, where you look at the season ticket price and you look at it across the entire of the football league, and you look at the Premier League as well. Boro is arguably, I think it's 5th or 6th highest in English football, which is really interesting. When you look at it from a Premier League perspective, I think you can't look at it because the amount of commercial impact that they have and the amount of money they make, they can, and the same with like Bayern Munich as well, and all the big clubs, they can afford to have a really cheap price because they make enough revenue throughout the year to really afford that the loss and the impact that they have that can make millions and billions some clubs. But for Boro, they're heavily reliant on ticket sales. And when you look at this from my perspective, I think that you should not always have majority of your revenue stream coming from one area as a club. You have to make different areas of where you're able to generate revenue. And sometimes it's going to be fan related to your customer. There's one aspect where it shouldn't impact fans at all. Where is investment in brand? Where is investment in different areas to try and bring local support within it? And then also, what else can you do to really drive your reach or improve your reach in your customer fan base? Because I think it's very naive to say that Middlesbrough fans are only from Middlesbrough. It's not. A very good brand and a very good digital strategy can really open up a lot of conversations across the globe. You can look at teams like, Wrexham's a fine example, but they've got their own story, they're everything. Massive global fan base now. Sunderland, dare I say, increased their fan base by Sunderland till I die, which is, yes, we all laughed at them, but they probably could increase the revenue from different countries from there. So you've got to have a look at the content element of it, and there's free ways of doing that. There's YouTube, all that kind of stuff. There's digital strategy that can really help with that. And Boris should not be naive in that world, because it is a very, very good thing for longer term success for that. Working with brands myself, I've done it myself, so I know it's definitely doable. But for me, the ticket price themselves, like I'm a bit annoyed at how much revenue do you need, and also if Boro fans going to accept like mid-table, also recruitment as well. You can always bypass recruitment. There's always different ways that you have to impact the fan. Boro need to do more. They need to be better, and they have to improve that communication with the fans. I think there's a lot of gains that you have to make, and an openness and the ability to kind of communicate with the fans to say, this is what we're seeing, this is how the things are increasing, this is why we need to do certain things, this is what we're doing. That will go a long way if it's very open and transparent. But it doesn't when it's very closed box and you can't see what's happening. It raises more questions than answers. And I think this is why you see a lot of people getting frustrated, because they don't understand why prices go up. I think some fans can say, "Oh, we paid 8 million for Rodgers, so that's 8 million the key." Well, it's probably not the case. But if Boro communicated that, you kind of go, right, well, that makes a lot more sense for us to, okay, well, this Rogers money is going on the Lecky bill or something. This is going on somewhere else, but then we've got this in our budget for next year. It's understandable, but we just don't do it. But they are doing more stuff with the supporters forum and group fan bases and getting on podcasts and stuff, which is you should be doing as a club. But we need to do more of it. And also, if you are getting people into these conversations with the club, you have to take their opinion and also implement it if there's enough argument for it. There's a number of conversations that you can have, but you've got to implement them too. But overall, I would say I'm disappointed with the increase. Or did I expect it? Yes. And will we see an impact on Boro over the next few months? I'm probably going to say that we will see a bit of an impact because it only takes a few thousand people not to renew this. Well, a couple of thousand people not to renew this year, and you've lost a lot of commercial revenue, which you already would have got if you just kept it at the same price. So it's a gamble for them, but at the end of the day, it depends on what people think and whether they want to renew or not. And I'm really keen to hear the conversation as well. So if you have an opinion on it, I would 100% put it in our comments. We can take that to a supporters forum. We can echo your opinion as well. And I think that's a kind of a place that we should really open that up to. Our Telegram chats there. We've got all that stuff there. If you ever have an opinion on it, do bring it because we have that accessibility now. I think it's a podcast, which I never thought we would. I thought we were just a podcast, but it turns out we can be a lot more than that. But guys, is there anything else that you would like to kind of chat about in that realm on the season ticket stuff? Is there any other opinions that you want to raise, or are you happy to kind of leave that conversation there? Dana, do you got anything else?
Well, I was just going to say I hate how football is. I think there's a systemic issue there with it. And I know this is because I'm not entirely clued up with like the kind of market strategy as you guys are and like the commercial side of things. But, just as a fan, like as a person, it is disheartening and completely disillusioning that I'm looking at, like, for example, the cost of a shirt. Like I tried to get a Crooks Real Salt Lake shirt the other day. It would have cost me $179 to get a Real Salt Lake shirt with Crooks on the back. Now, I know that that's America, but I think football in general just has a big problem in pricing out its core. Like, it is or it's supposed to be anyway, a working class sport, and it's so far away from that. It's untrue, and it's just, I hate what it's become essentially. Like, you go to the Riverside and well, not necessarily the Riverside, you go to the concourse of a stadium, the price of a pint, the price of a hot dog. Like, it's crazy how expensive football is, and it just shouldn't be the case for me. And I know there's like reasons behind it that kind of go outside of football, and football kind of, I guess, is just one of the many dominoes in that kind of sequence. But I can't stand the way that football has just become so bloated with money. People don't know what to do with it, and they're pricing out the fans, because the fans, at the end of the day, it's so cliche, but they are the very, very cornerstone of football clubs. And if you take out the fans, you take out the heart of a football club. And I guess just final point to leave at the door, that I just hate how expensive football is. I really wish it wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I echo that as well. Like, it's went pretty silly. I think when you have billionaire owners coming more and more into the game, the whole commercial output of football, from what it was even in early 2000s to now, the 90s, there's a lot of money getting spent now, and it's very, very scary to kind of see that. And that in itself has a domino effect on so many different things. If you're paying a player over 200, 300 grand a week, you've got to have a few problems coming your way in the short term. And does anyone need 300 grand a week? I don't know. That's a normal conversation. Probably not. But it's they're getting it, and you can't complain about it. And if someone's earning it, they're earning it, and that's it. But you've got to try and find ways to make more. If you're going to have to try and find ways to make more money, you've got to have to be creative, and you've got to do. It's not like making money's can be a very difficult thing for football club. There's a lot they can do, and I think you've got to be very, very open and having a different strategy to really improve that. Like, in whether that's naivety or what, but I have to look at these different ways of doing it and finding efficiencies, not And what I really don't want, and what would really upset me is if I was at a meeting and they said, "Oh, well, we've always done it this way." That will really, really annoy me because you should never always do it that way. It doesn't always mean it's the best way. And we need to massively improve things. I think as a club, still, I've been banging on the door for this for years around how commercial we can improve. Can do a low ticket price, but on upselling in the stadium. Can you do more deals with like the pies and the pints? Can you do like an investment where if you get a season ticket, you get 5% off the club shop throughout the year? There's so much you can do in
That's
that
what
world.
Redcar did.
Yeah, so
That's
there's
what
like
Redcar
yeah,
did. And sorry to cut your point off there, because I've just got the membership. Like, this is a Northern League Division 1 side, right? Bear that in mind, because Boro can implement this being a side with obviously more tools to be able to implement something like this. But the membership at Redcar, entry to first team games, reserve games, women's home league games, there was a stay local card. So every kind of marked place in Redcar, like I mentioned, Rita's earlier, you would get the opportunity to have discounts in those particular retailers. 10% off all food and drink at Redcar Athletic. An invite to the quarterly members meeting and free entry into the monthly quiz. Like, if you upscale this into Middlesbrough's area, it could do so much, and it's just that extra incentive that I think we just don't have. And to add to that, obviously Redcar Athletic don't have a bit, club shop necessarily, although they do. It's like a tiny thing though. It's nothing on like Boro's scale. As you said, their discount on the club shop. There's just so many things that they could do to just further bring people in and make people think, oh, it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, the football, it depends on whether the football's good or not, that people will sit back and say, yeah, that's worth it.
Yeah, and like on the pitch as well, like if Boro were bottom of the league, right, you could give a ticket away for £1 and people would still not turn up. It's such a volatile industry, so you have to play the long game. You have to play it. For me, my last key take out of it all is invest in your brand. Invest in that brand and really try and make Middlesbrough a very more commercial, lucrative company in general. You can do that through so many different streams, and it's not hard, and it's not a huge investment either. You can invest a couple of £1 million into it. I've seen it and done it. Like, you can do all that, and you can shift some really good metrics on it, but it's how you want to play it. Play the long game, and it's not just us. It's the fans 10 years from now that you need to worry about, and that's where I think you should look at too. But Tom, is there anything else that you want to chat about in around this section, or have you got any final points at all?
I was just thinking there while you've been speaking. I think one final thing that I think could help in terms of actually getting people to take up on season tickets would be hearing from someone like Michael Carricock here in Scott and be like, look, this is what the aims are for next season, and this is why we need your support through buying a season ticket. Give a little bit more incentive to buying one, because I mean, there was price increase last season, and I think as much as people weren't happy with any sort of increase, and they're never going to be, it was easier to justify that with what was going on the pitch and the way it looked like the club was going, the trajectory we were on. It was like, yes, we might lose players in the off season, but we might still be looking at some significant fees. And the way the club's been going so far, there's a good chance we'll be watching a promotion season next season. It hasn't panned out that way, and I think looking at how the season's played out, I think it is clear that the club are taking a longer approach to actually progressing and thinking, we're going to develop players this season. We still don't have, all the positions that we need filled, and we're probably waiting for certain players at the end of this season. But to everyone who bought a season ticket at the end of last season, they're just kind of like, well, this is crap. This is so far of a step backwards from where we were last season, and we've paid increased prices for it. I feel a little bit ripped off, which I know you can't really do with football because it is so volatile in terms of performances on the pitch and where we might finish in the league and stuff. So you go to support the team. You don't go to see the team win every week. However, I think there was a realistic expectation last year that we were probably going to try and push on and get promoted this year, and it just hasn't happened. So I think for next year, it's just kind of like, what are we actually aiming for? Obviously, the club can't really come out and say if it's going to be another transition season or not, because that's going to negatively impact season ticket sales. As much as we'd love them to be honest and be like, oh, in that case, I'm not coming anymore. I'll pick and choose my games or something. But if we're planning on having a go at it next season, and we are probably going to have all the positions filled that we've left empty this season, and next season might be completely different. Why don't you just get someone out to say that and be like, look, next season is looking promising for us if we can do what we want to do, to do that and come and support the team, buy a season ticket. So it would give a little bit more of a USB to buying something. Even though I think a key one would be what you've mentioned in terms of adding things that a season ticket might get you. Something like this might also help.
Yeah, and to round it off, I would say Middlesbrough are paying, as a club, are paying now for bad investments that they've made in the past. £16 million on Brett Sumberlonger on 30 grand a week. There's so many investments that you can look at which we've got horrendously wrong, and I think everyone said about it in the past, if you invest badly, you'll pay for it eventually. I think we've done that as well. I think as a club, we've kind of got things badly wrong on the pitch, which has affected us off the pitch just as much. And you can't always expect a fan to foot the bill for that. And that's it. You can't expect them for your one doing them.
The fans will always suffer at the end of the day. The amount of money in the game, the fans will always be the one that has to pick up pieces, and I don't agree with that whatsoever.